The planet Eos was a world of vibrant colors and strange, beautiful landscapes. Its skies shimmered with hues of green and gold, while its oceans reflected the light of two suns that hung low on the horizon. For thousands of years, alien civilizations had thrived here, building cities that blended seamlessly into the natural environment. They lived in harmony, their cultures rich with stories passed down through generations. Among these stories were legends of a species that had once ruled the planet humans. But those tales felt more like myths now, distant echoes of a time long forgotten. Liam was one of the few who still studied those old legends. A historian by trade, he spent most of his days buried in ancient texts, trying to piece together the truth about humanity's departure from Eos. He often wondered why they had left and where they had gone. Some believed humans had abandoned the planet because it could no longer sustain them. Others thought they had simply grown bored and moved on to new worlds. Whatever the reason, their absence allowed other species to flourish. Over time, memories of humans faded, leaving only fragments scattered across dusty archives. But all of that changed one fateful morning. It began with a shadow. A dark blot against the bright sky. At first, people thought it was a storm cloud, or perhaps a flock of migrating birds. But as the shadow grew larger, panic spread through the streets. The object blocking the sunlight wasn't natural. It was a ship, a massive vessel unlike anything anyone had ever seen. And it wasn't alone. By midday, dozens of ships filled the sky. They loomed over cities and hovered above oceans, their metallic surfaces gleaming ominously in the sunlight. The sheer size of the fleet was overwhelming. Each ship was bigger than the tallest buildings in the capital city, and together they formed a wall of steel and glass that seemed to stretch endlessly across the horizon. News of the arrival spread quickly. People gathered in squares and marketplaces, staring up at the sky with a mixture of awe and fear. No one knew what these ships meant or why they were here. Were they explorers, refugees, invaders? The uncertainty gnawed at everyone's nerves. Among those watching the spectacle was Claire, an engineer known for her sharp mind and quick hands. She had been working on a project to improve energy efficiency in local power grids when the ships appeared. Like everyone else, she stopped what she was doing to watch. Unlike most, however, she couldn't shake the feeling that something about the ships felt familiar. Claire hurried to her workshop, grabbing tools and equipment before heading toward the nearest landing site. If these ships really were human-made, as some early reports suggested, then understanding their technology might be key to figuring out their intentions. As she navigated through crowded streets, she noticed how quiet everything had become. Even the usually bustling markets were eerily silent, as if the entire population was holding its breath. At the edge of the city, one of the smaller ships descended slowly, touching down in an open field. Soldiers emerged from the craft, clad in sleek, futuristic armor. Their movements were precise, almost mechanical, and they carried weapons that looked far more advanced than anything Claire had ever seen. Despite their intimidating appearance, they didn't attack. Instead, they secured the area, setting up barriers and scanning the surroundings with strange devices. A crowd began to form at a safe distance, murmuring nervously. Liam arrived just as Claire was setting up her equipment. He recognized her immediately. Her reputation preceded her and approached cautiously. "What are you doing?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "Trying to figure out what makes these things tick," she replied without looking up. "If we can understand their tech, maybe we can predict their next move." Liam nodded, impressed by her focus. "Do you think they're human?" Claire hesitated, then pointed to a symbol etched onto the side of the ship. It was simple yet unmistakable, a stylized globe surrounded by stars. "That's Earth," she said. "There's no doubt about it. These ships belong to humans." The confirmation sent a chill down Liam's spine. Humans had returned after 3,000 years, but why? And what did they want? Before he could ask further questions, a loudspeaker crackled to life. Everyone turned their attention to the ship as a voice boomed out, deep and commanding. "Attention, inhabitants of Eos," the voice declared. We are the representatives of Earth. We have come to reclaim this planet, which is rightfully ours. Your presence here will be tolerated only under our terms. Further instructions will follow shortly." The message ended abruptly, leaving behind a heavy silence. The crowd erupted into murmurs, some people shouting in anger while others whispered. In fear, Liam exchanged a glance with Claire. Both of them understood the gravity of the situation. This wasn't a friendly visit. Humanity hadn't returned to negotiate or coexist. They had come to conquer as the soldiers began dispersing. Claire packed up her gear reluctantly. "We need to get this information to someone who can use it," she said. "Someone in charge." Liam agreed. Together, they made their way back to the city center, where leaders from various alien communities were already convening. The mood was tense, with arguments breaking out over how to respond. Some advocated for immediate resistance, while others urged caution. Hoping to avoid bloodshed, Liam stepped forward, addressing the group. "We don't know much yet, but one thing is clear. These humans aren't here to share. They've claimed this planet as theirs, and they won't hesitate to take what they want by force." His words sobered the room. Claire added, "Their technology is far beyond ours. We'll need to find a way to level the playing field if we stand any chance." The meeting continued late into the night, with plans being drawn up and alliances forged. By the time Liam and Claire left, exhaustion weighed heavily on them both, yet neither could sleep. Too many questions swirled in their minds. How had humans managed to advance so rapidly? What had they been doing during their absence? And most importantly, what would happen next? Back at his home, Liam stared out the window at the darkened sky. The ships still hung there, unmoving, casting long shadows over the land. He thought about the history books he had read, the stories of humanity's dominance and eventual departure. Those accounts had always seemed distant, irrelevant even. Now they felt frighteningly real. Claire, meanwhile, tinkered with the data she had collected earlier. Her workshop was cluttered with wires and gadgets, but her mind was sharp, focused. She replayed the recording of the announcement over and over, analyzing every word, every inflection. There was something cold and calculated about the speaker's tone, something that hinted at years of preparation and planning. Neither of them realized it yet, but their lives were about to change forever. The return of humanity marked the beginning of a conflict that would test the very fabric of EOS. And though neither Liam nor Claire knew exactly what lay ahead, they both understood one thing: survival would require courage, ingenuity, and unity. The days following the humans' arrival were filled with tension and uncertainty. The alien leaders of EOS scrambled to organize a response, but their efforts were disjointed. Each community had its own ideas about how to deal with the situation, and disagreements often turned into heated arguments. Despite the chaos, one thing was clear: humanity's declaration left no room for negotiation. They had come to reclaim the planet, and they expected obedience. Liam spent most of his time in meetings, offering insights based on his knowledge of human history. He explained that humans were known for their ambition and resourcefulness, traits that had driven them to explore the stars centuries ago. But he also warned that these same qualities could make them ruthless when challenged. "They see themselves as superior," Liam told the council. "If we resist, they won't hesitate to crush us." Claire, meanwhile, worked tirelessly in her workshop, analyzing the data she had gathered from the human ship. She dismantled parts of her equipment, rewiring circuits and running simulations. Her goal was simple: to understand the technology behind the humans' weapons and defenses. If she could replicate even a fraction of their advancements, it might give the aliens a fighting chance. One evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon, a message arrived from the human fleet. It was broadcast across all communication channels, demanding that representatives from the alien communities meet aboard one of their ships. The tone was firm but not overtly hostile, yet everyone knew this was likely a test. The council debated whether to comply. Some argued that attending the meeting would show willingness to cooperate, potentially buying time to prepare. Others feared it was a trap, designed to intimidate or capture key leaders. In the end, the decision was made to send a small delegation. Liam volunteered to go, citing his expertise in human behavior. Claire insisted on joining him, believing her technical skills might prove useful during the encounter. The next morning, Liam and Claire stood at the edge of the field where the smaller human ship had landed. A group of soldiers emerged, escorting them toward the vessel. As they approached, Claire couldn't help but marvel at its design. The surface shimmered faintly as if alive, and the air around it hummed with energy. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. Inside, the atmosphere was cold and sterile. The walls gleamed with polished metal, and the floor vibrated faintly underfoot. They were led through narrow corridors until they reached a large chamber. At the center stood a man dressed in a dark uniform, flanked by armed guards. His expression was stern, his posture rigid. This, Claire realized, was the voice from the announcement, the leader of the human fleet. "Welcome," he said, his tone clipped and formal. "I am Daniel Hayes, commander of the Earth Reclamation Fleet." Liam nodded politely, though his heart raced. "Thank you for allowing us to speak with you. I am Liam, a historian, and this is Claire, an engineer." Daniel studied them briefly. Before gesturing for them to sit, "You represent your people?" he asked. "To some extent," Liam replied carefully. "We've been tasked with understanding your intentions and conveying them to our leaders." Daniel leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the table. "Then let me be clear. Earth has returned to claim what is rightfully ours. Your presence here will be tolerated only if you submit to our authority. Resistance will not be accepted." Claire frowned, unable to stay silent. "And what happens if we choose to resist?" Daniel's gaze shifted to her, sharp and unyielding. "Then you will face the consequences. We have no interest in prolonging conflict, but we will not hesitate to eliminate threats." His words sent a chill through the room. Liam glanced at Claire, silently urging her to remain calm. He cleared his throat before speaking again. "Commander Hayes, surely there must be room for discussion. Coexistence benefits both sides." Daniel smirked, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Coexistence implies equality. There is none. You are primitives compared to us. Our technology, our resources, our way of life, we surpass you in every way. Submission is your only option." Claire clenched her fists beneath the table, struggling to contain her anger. "You underestimate us," she said evenly. "This planet isn't just yours because you say so. It belongs to everyone who calls it home." Daniel chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Sentimental nonsense. Strength decides ownership. And trust me, you lack the strength to challenge us." The conversation continued for nearly an hour, with Daniel repeatedly emphasizing humanity's dominance. He revealed little about their plans beyond enforcing control, offering vague promises of protection in exchange for compliance. By the time the meeting ended, Liam and Claire felt drained and more determined than ever to resist. As they were escorted back to the surface, Claire turned to Liam. "Did you hear him? He doesn't care about diplomacy. This isn't about reclaiming a lost world, it's about power." Liam nodded grimly. "He wants to break us, to prove that we're inferior, but we can't let him win." Back in the city, they reported their findings to the council. The room fell silent as they recounted Daniel's words. Fear and frustration hung heavy in the air, but so did determination. One elder, a wise woman named Elena, spoke up. "If they think we'll bow without a fight, they're mistaken. We may not match their weapons, but we have something they don't: unity." Her words sparked a renewed sense of purpose. Plans began taking shape, with different communities pooling their resources and sharing strategies. Engineers like Claire focused on reverse engineering human tech, while others trained militias and fortified key locations. Liam helped coordinate these efforts, using his knowledge of human tactics to anticipate their moves. Despite the growing resistance, tensions escalated. The humans wasted no time asserting their dominance. They imposed strict curfews, confiscating food supplies and restricting movement. Anyone caught violating their rules faced harsh punishment. Entire neighborhoods were razed to make way for new settlements, displacing thousands of families. Protests erupted, only to be met with brutal force. Soldiers fired indiscriminately into crowds, leaving bodies in the streets. Among those affected was Sophie, a young medic who lived in one of the hardest-hit areas. Her family had been killed during the initial raids, leaving her alone and angry. When she heard about the resistance, she joined immediately, eager to fight back. "They took everything from me," she told Liam during a training session. "If they think we'll just roll over, they're wrong." Sophie quickly became one of the group's most passionate members. Her medical skills proved invaluable, treating wounded rebels and keeping morale high. She often worked alongside Claire, who admired her resilience. "You remind me of myself when I was younger," Claire admitted one night as they patched up a soldier injured in a skirmish. "Stubborn and fearless." Sophie smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I'm not doing this for glory. I'm doing it because I refuse to let them win." While the resistance grew stronger, cracks began appearing within the human ranks. Not all soldiers agreed with Daniel's methods. Some had grown disillusioned, horrified by the violence and destruction they witnessed. A few even defected, sneaking away under cover of darkness to join the rebels. These defectors provided valuable information about the humans' weaknesses, helping the resistance plan their attacks more effectively. One such defector was Ryan, a young pilot who had grown up hearing stories of Earth's greatness. Reality, however, was far darker. "They lied to us," he confessed to Liam after being smuggled into a safe house. "They said we'd be liberators, bringing order to a chaotic world. Instead, we're conquerors, destroying everything in our path." Ryan's testimony bolstered the resistance's resolve. With his help, they identified vulnerabilities in the human fleet's supply lines and communication networks. Targeting these weak points became their primary focus. As weeks turned into months, the stage was set for a larger confrontation. The humans tightened their grip, pushing deeper into alien territories. Meanwhile, the resistance prepared for battle, knowing that defeat meant annihilation. Yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, a glimmer of hope remained. For the first time in centuries, disparate species had united under a common cause. Together, they vowed to protect their home no matter the cost. Liam often found himself reflecting on the irony of the situation. Humans had returned claiming superiority, yet their actions had inspired unity among those they sought to dominate. Perhaps, he thought, that was their greatest mistake. Strength wasn't measured by weapons or technology, it was measured by the bonds between people. And on Eos, those bonds were stronger than ever. The resistance was growing, but so was the pressure. Every day brought new challenges as the humans tightened their grip on Eos. The alien communities had banded together, united by a shared goal, to protect their planet from invaders who saw them as nothing more than obstacles. Yet the odds were stacked heavily against them. The humans' advanced technology and sheer numbers made any confrontation seem almost impossible to win. Liam spent most of his time strategizing with other leaders. He pored over maps, analyzing human movements and identifying weak points in their defenses. His knowledge of human psychology gave him an edge. He understood how they thought, how they planned, and where they might slip up. But even with his insights, the task ahead felt daunting. Claire worked just as tirelessly, her workshop transformed into a makeshift lab. She had managed to salvage pieces of human tech scavenged from battlefields and wreckage. Using these parts, she reverse-engineered weapons and tools that could rival the invaders' arsenal. It wasn't easy. Human technology was far beyond anything she had ever encountered, but her determination kept her going. Late at night, when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, she reminded herself why she was doing this. The humans had taken too much already. They wouldn't take everything. Sophie became a vital part of the resistance, not only because of her medical skills, but also because of her unshakable spirit. She treated wounded fighters, stitched up injuries, and provided comfort to those who needed it. But she did more than heal bodies. She healed spirits. Her fiery speeches inspired others to keep fighting, even when hope seemed lost. "They think we're weak," she often said. "Let's show them what we're made of." Despite their efforts, the humans continued to push forward. Entire villages were destroyed, their inhabitants either killed or forced into labor camps. The rebels tried to save as many people as they could, smuggling survivors to hidden safe zones deep in the wilderness. These safe zones became hubs of activity, places where refugees could find shelter and where plans for retaliation were hatched. One evening, Liam called a meeting in one of these safe zones. The group gathered in a dimly lit bunker carved into the side of a mountain. Maps and diagrams covered the walls, illuminated by flickering lanterns. Everyone present knew the stakes. They were running out of time. "We need to strike soon," Liam began, addressing the room. "If we wait too long, they'll have complete control." "We need to hit them where it hurts," Claire nodded, stepping forward. "I've been working on something that might help." She held up a small device, no bigger than her palm. "This is a disruptor. It can disable their weapons temporarily. If we use it during an attack, it'll give us a chance to fight back." Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. Sophie grinned. "That's brilliant. When do we start?" "Not yet," Liam cautioned. "We need to choose our target carefully. Something big enough to make them notice, but small enough to handle without losing too many of our own." After hours of discussion, they settled on a plan. Their first major operation would focus on a human supply depot located near the outskirts of the capital city. The depot stored food, fuel, and ammunition resources critical to the invaders' operations. Destroying it would deal a significant blow to their efforts while demonstrating the Resistance's strength. Preparations began immediately. Weapons were distributed, teams were organized, and escape routes were mapped out. Claire trained volunteers on how to use the disruptors, emphasizing the importance of timing. "You only get one shot with these," she explained. "Make it count." As the days passed, tension mounted. Everyone knew the risks involved. Many would likely die in the attack, but no one backed down. This wasn't just about survival, it was about reclaiming their dignity, their freedom. Finally, the night of the operation arrived. The rebels moved quietly through the forest, sticking to shadows and avoiding patrols. The air was thick with anticipation, each step bringing them closer to their objective. At the edge of the clearing stood the depot, surrounded by armed guards and surveillance drones. Liam signaled for silence, raising a hand to halt the group. He scanned the area, ensuring everyone was in position. Then he gave the order. Claire activated the disruptors, sending pulses of energy toward the depot. For a brief moment, the lights flickered and the hum of machinery died down. The guards froze, confused by the sudden malfunction. "Now!" Liam shouted. The rebels charged forward, catching the humans off guard. Explosions rocked the depot, as bombs planted earlier detonated, igniting fires that lit up the night sky. Chaos erupted as soldiers scrambled to regroup, firing blindly into the darkness. The resistance fought fiercely, using guerrilla tactics to outmaneuver their opponents. Despite being outnumbered, they held their ground, driven by desperation and resolve, but the victory came at a cost. Several rebels fell during the assault, their sacrifices ensuring the mission's success. Among them was Ryan, the defector, who had risked everything to join the cause. He took a bullet meant for Sophie, shielding her with his body. As he lay dying, he whispered, "Don't stop. Finish what we started." Tears streamed down Sophie's face as she knelt beside him. "We will," she promised, "for all of us." By dawn, the depot was reduced to smoldering ruins. The rebels retreated into the forest, carrying their wounded and mourning their dead. Though exhausted, they couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. They had struck a blow against the invaders, proving that resistance was possible. Back at the safe zone, celebrations were muted. The rebels knew this was just the beginning. The humans wouldn't take the attack lightly. They would retaliate with overwhelming force. But for now, they allowed themselves a moment of pride. They had shown the invaders that they weren't afraid to fight back. Daniel Hayes received news of the attack with barely contained fury. He paced the command center of his flagship, fists clenched at his sides. How could they possibly pull this off? He demanded, glaring at his officers. Find out who's behind this and eliminate them. His anger boiled over as reports poured in detailing the extent of the damage. The loss of supplies was bad enough, but the symbolic defeat stung even more. The aliens had dared to challenge humanity's authority, and Daniel couldn't let that stand. He ordered immediate counterattacks, targeting suspected rebel strongholds. Soldiers swept through villages, rounding up civilians and interrogating anyone suspected of aiding the resistance. Brutality became the norm as Daniel sought to crush dissent once and for all, yet even as fear spread across Eos, so did defiance. Stories of the depot attack traveled quickly, inspiring others to join the fight. New recruits flocked to the resistance, swelling their ranks. Farmers donated food, engineers shared blueprints, and ordinary citizens risked their lives to smuggle information. The rebellion grew stronger, fueled by a collective desire for justice. Liam watched it all unfold with a mixture of pride and concern. The resistance was gaining momentum, but he knew the hardest battles were still ahead. The humans wouldn't give up easily, and every victory would come at a price. Still, he refused to lose hope. "We're not fighting just for ourselves," he told Claire one evening as they reviewed plans for future operations. "We're fighting for everyone who calls this planet home." Claire nodded, her expression resolute. "And we'll keep fighting until we win." In the weeks that followed, skirmishes broke out across Eos. The humans launched relentless assaults, determined to stamp out the rebellion. But the resistance adapted, striking quickly and retreating before reinforcements could arrive. Each clash chipped away at the invaders' dominance, eroding their confidence. Through it all, Liam, Claire, and Sophie remained at the heart of the struggle. They led by example, risking their lives alongside their comrades. Together, they forged a bond stronger than any weapon, a bond built on trust, sacrifice, and unwavering determination. Though the war was far from over, one thing was certain. The humans had underestimated their opponents. What they had dismissed as primitive creatures had proven to be resilient, resourceful, and unbreakable. And as long as there was breath in their bodies, the people of Eos would never surrender. The humans struck back with a fury that left no room for mercy. After the destruction of the supply depot, Daniel Hayes unleashed his full might on the resistance. Entire regions were targeted in brutal sweeps, their populations rounded up and interrogated. The once peaceful cities of Eos now bore the scars of conflict, burnt-out buildings, shattered streets, and walls riddled with bullet holes. Fear hung heavy in the air, but it did not break the spirit of those who fought back. Liam and Claire worked around the clock to keep the rebellion alive. They moved from safe zone to safe zone, avoiding detection while coordinating attacks. Each victory came at a cost, though. The humans had superior weapons and numbers, and their losses were quickly replenished. For every soldier the resistance took down, 2 more seemed to take their place. Yet despite the mounting challenges, the rebels refused to give up. Sophie became a symbol of hope among the fighters. Her fiery speeches rallied the weary, and her medical skills saved countless lives. She often reminded others why they were fighting not just for themselves, but for the future of Eos. "If we stop now," she would say, "they'll take everything. Our homes, our freedom, our dignity. We can't let that happen." One evening, as the group gathered in a hidden cave to plan their next move, Liam unfolded a map marked with red circles. "These are their main communication hubs," he explained, pointing to several locations scattered across the planet. "If we can disable them, we'll cut off their ability to coordinate attacks." Claire nodded, holding up a prototype device she had been working on. "This disruptor can overload their systems if we plant it close enough. It won't be permanent, but it'll buy us time." The plan was risky. The hubs were heavily guarded, and getting close enough to plant the devices would require precision and stealth. But the rebels knew they had no choice. Without disrupting the humans' communications, any large-scale attack would be doomed. To fail, they divided into teams, each tasked with targeting a different hub. Liam led one group, while Sophie joined another. Claire stayed behind to monitor the operation remotely, using scavenged equipment to track the humans' movements. As the teams prepared to depart, nervous energy filled the air. Everyone understood the stakes. If they failed, the resistance might never recover. The night of the mission was cold and moonless, perfect for sneaking through enemy lines. Liam's team crept through dense forests, avoiding patrols and surveillance. Drones. The hum of human machinery grew louder as they approached their target. A towering structure surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards. Liam signaled for silence, waiting for Claire's signal over the comms. "Now!" came her voice, barely audible above the static. The disruptors buzzed to life, sending pulses of energy toward the hub. Lights flickered and alarms blared as the system faltered. Seizing the moment, the rebels charged forward, planting explosives and disabling key components. Gunfire erupted as soldiers scrambled to respond, but the chaos worked in the rebels' favor. Within minutes, the hub was engulfed in flames. Its connection to the network severed across the planet. Similar scenes played out one by one. The communication hubs fell, leaving the humans scrambling to regain control. For the first time since their arrival, the invaders faced real setbacks. The resistance celebrated quietly, knowing this was only a temporary advantage. Daniel Hayes was furious. He stormed through the command center of his flagship, barking orders at his officers. "Find them," he roared. "I want every rebel leader captured or killed." His anger boiled over into recklessness. Instead of focusing on rebuilding their networks, he ordered massive raids on suspected rebel strongholds. Entire villages were razed, their inhabitants slaughtered or taken prisoner. Among those captured was Claire. She had stayed behind to ensure the success of the mission, monitoring the humans' responses and relaying updates to the field teams. But her position was compromised when a defector turned traitor, revealing her location to the enemy. Soldiers stormed the safe house, dragging her away before she could destroy the evidence of her work. Claire was brought before Daniel, who regarded her with cold disdain. "You think you're clever?" he sneered, gesturing to the tools and schematics spread across the table. "Your little gadgets may have caused some inconvenience, but they won't save you or your friends." Claire met his gaze without flinching. "You underestimate us," she said evenly. "No matter what you do, we'll keep fighting." "You can't break us." Daniel's jaw tightened, his patience wearing thin. "We'll see about that." While Claire endured interrogation, the resistance reeled from her capture. Liam felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He blamed himself for not insisting she retreat sooner. "We need to get her back," he told Sophie during a hurried meeting. "She's too important to lose." Sophie agreed, though the task seemed impossible. The human's flagship was heavily fortified, floating high above the planet's surface. Breaking in would require a level of precision, and daring that bordered on madness. But Sophie wasn't about to give up. "We've done harder things," she said firmly. "If anyone deserves a rescue, it's Claire." Plans were drawn up quickly. A small team, led by Liam and Sophie, would infiltrate the flagship under the cover of darkness. Using modified disruptors, they hoped to disable the ship's defenses long enough to locate and extract Claire. It was a desperate gamble, but they had no other options. The night of the rescue, the team launched from a hidden base aboard a stolen human shuttle. Disguised as one of the invaders' own vessels, they slipped past outer defenses and docked with the flagship. Tension crackled in the air as they disembarked, moving silently through the ship's labyrinthine corridors. Inside, the atmosphere was oppressive. The walls gleamed with polished metal, and the air carried a faint metallic scent. Armed guards patrolled the halls, their footsteps echoing ominously. Liam and Sophie exchanged glances, signaling caution. Every step brought them closer to danger and to Claire. Finally, they reached the detention block. Sophie picked the lock on a heavy door, revealing rows of cells. In one corner sat Claire, her face pale but defiant. Relief washed over Liam as he rushed to free her. "Are you okay?" he asked urgently. "I'm fine," Claire replied, though her voice betrayed exhaustion. "Let's just get out of here." Their escape was anything but smooth. Alarms blared. As they retraced their steps, pursued by squads of soldiers, bullets ricocheted off walls, forcing them to duck and weave. At one point, Sophie took a hit to the shoulder, gritting her teeth against the pain. "Keep moving," she urged, refusing to slow down. Just as it seemed they wouldn't make it, the shuttle came into view. The pilot, a young rebel named Marcus, fired the engines, creating a diversion that allowed the team to board safely. As they lifted off, explosions rocked the flagship behind them. Though the damage was minor, it gave the impression of a larger attack, buying them precious time. Back at the safe zone, Claire was treated for injuries sustained during her captivity. Despite her ordeal, she refused to rest, immediately returning to her work. "We don't have time to recover," she insisted. "Not while they're still out there." Her resilience inspired the others. The rescue mission had boosted morale, proving that even the most daunting challenges could be overcome with determination and teamwork. The resistance grew stronger, drawing in new recruits and gaining allies among disillusioned human soldiers. Among these defectors was a man named Alex, a technician who had grown disgusted with Daniel's cruelty. He provided critical information about the humans' plans, including details about an upcoming assault on the capital city, the heart of the Resistance's operations. Knowing they couldn't defend the city directly, Liam proposed a bold strategy: lure the humans into a trap. Using decoys and false intelligence, they would make the invaders believe the capital was undefended. When the humans advanced, the rebels would strike from all sides, surrounding them and cutting off their retreat. The plan required precise timing and coordination, but the rebels were ready. They fortified key positions, stockpiled weapons, and prepared for the fight of their lives. As the humans descended upon the city, expecting an easy victory, they found themselves ambushed instead. Explosions rocked the streets as the rebels opened fire, catching the invaders off guard. The battle raged for hours, neither side willing to yield. Amid the chaos, Liam confronted Daniel face to face. The human commander sneered, raising his weapon. "You think you can win? You're nothing but insects beneath my boot." Liam didn't respond. Instead, he lunged forward, disarming Daniel with a swift motion. The two men grappled, trading blows as gunfire echoed around them. Finally, Sophie intervened, firing a shot that incapacitated Daniel. With their leader defeated, the remaining human forces surrendered. As the dust settled, the survivors emerged from hiding, surveying the wreckage of their city. Though the cost had been high, the tide of the war had turned. Together, the people of Iaz began rebuilding, forging a new society built on unity and resilience. For Liam, Claire, and Sophie, the journey was far from over. But for the first time in months, there was hope for peace, for justice, and for a brighter future. The final battle had ended, but the scars it left behind were deep. The streets of the capital city lay in ruins, littered with debris and charred remnants of buildings. Smoke still hung in the air, a grim reminder of the violence that had unfolded. Yet amidst the destruction, there was a sense of triumph, for quiet but undeniable pride among those who had fought for their home. For the first time in what felt like forever, the people of Iaz could breathe freely. Liam stood at the edge of the city, gazing out over the horizon. The suns were setting, casting long shadows across the landscape. He thought about everything they had endured, the sacrifices, the losses, the moments when hope seemed impossible to hold on to. And yet, here they were. They had won. Not just against the humans, but against despair itself. Claire joined him, her arms crossed as she stared at the same view. Her face was tired, marked by exhaustion and the lingering effects of her captivity, but her eyes were sharp, focused on what lay ahead. "It's strange," she said softly. "After all this time fighting, I almost don't know what to do with peace." Liam smiled faintly. "We rebuild. That's what we do now." Rebuilding wasn't going to be easy. The war had taken its toll not just on the cities and infrastructure, but on the people themselves. Families had been torn apart, homes destroyed, lives lost. The survivors bore the weight of grief, some more openly than others. Sophie wandered through the wreckage, helping tend to the injured and comforting those who had lost loved ones. She carried bandages and supplies in a satchel slung over her shoulder, her hands steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. "It's not fair," she muttered to herself one evening as she patched up a young boy whose leg had been crushed during the battle. They shouldn't have had to go through this. But life wasn't fair, and Sophie knew that better than most. What mattered now was how they moved forward. As much as she wanted to dwell on the pain, she forced herself to focus on healing both. For others and for herself, the resistance had taught her resilience, and she intended to use that strength to help rebuild EOS into something stronger than before. Meanwhile, Daniel Hayes sat in a makeshift cell, his once commanding presence reduced to a shell of bitterness. Defeat had stripped him of everything: his authority, his fleet, his pride. Guards watched him closely, ensuring he couldn't cause any further harm. Occasionally, Liam visited him, not out of malice but curiosity. He wanted to understand what drove someone like Daniel, what made him believe domination was the only path worth pursuing. "You don't get it, do you?" Daniel spat during one such visit. "You think winning this fight means you've won the war? But humanity doesn't give up. We adapt. We survive. You haven't seen the last of us." Liam didn't respond immediately. He studied Daniel's face, searching for traces of regret or remorse. There were none. "Maybe you're right," he finally said. "Maybe humans will come back someday? But if they do, they'll find a planet united, not divided. And next time, they'll face everyone together." Daniel sneered but said nothing more. His threats held no power anymore. The rebellion had shown that unity could overcome even the greatest odds. As news of the victory spread, other communities began reaching out to the resistance leaders. Some offered aid, while others sought guidance on how to rebuild. The aliens, who had once lived separately, now saw value in working together. Engineers shared blueprints, farmers pooled resources, and teachers organized classes to educate the next generation about the importance of cooperation. Claire played a key role in these efforts, using her knowledge of human technology to improve existing systems. With Alex's help, she modified scavenged equipment to create tools that benefited agriculture, medicine, and communication. Slowly but surely, the pieces of EOS started coming back together. One day, while testing a new irrigation system in a field outside the city, Claire noticed Sophie sitting nearby, staring at the sky. She walked over and sat down beside her. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Sophie hesitated before answering. "Everything. The war, the people we lost, the humans. Do you think they'll really try again, or was this it?" Claire sighed, brushing dirt off her hands. "I don't know. Humans are stubborn. If they see something they want, they usually come back for it. But we've proven we can stand up to them. That has to count for something." Sophie nodded slowly. "I guess it's just hard to imagine living without looking over my shoulder all the time." "I know," Claire said gently. "But maybe that's part of rebuilding, not just fixing the physical damage, but learning to trust again. To believe that tomorrow will be better than today." Their conversation shifted to lighter topics, laughter eventually replacing the somber tone. For a moment, they allowed themselves to forget the hardships and simply enjoy each other's company. It was a small step toward healing, but every step mattered. Back in the city, Liam worked alongside Elena, the elder who had inspired so many with her wisdom. Together, they drafted plans for a council that would represent all species on EOS. The goal was simple: ensure that no single group ever held too much power again. Decisions would be made collectively, with input from every community. "This is your legacy," Elena told Liam one afternoon as they reviewed the draft. "Not just defeating the humans, but creating a system where conflicts like this don't happen again." Liam shook his head modestly. "It's not just mine. Everyone played a part. Without people like Claire and Sophie and even defectors like Alex, we wouldn't be here." Elena smiled knowingly. "True, but leadership matters. People look to you because you remind them of what's possible when we work together." As days turned into weeks, life on EOS began to stabilize. The wounds of war weren't fully healed, but progress was visible everywhere. New buildings rose from the ashes of old ones, designed to blend harmoniously with the environment. Schools reopened, filling the air with the sounds of children laughing and learning. Markets bustled with activity, vendors exchanging goods and stories. Even the humans who had defected found places within the emerging society. Many chose to stay, eager to contribute to a world that valued collaboration over conquest. Their presence served as a reminder that change was possible even for those who had once followed destructive paths. One evening, Liam, Claire, and Sophie gathered on a hill overlooking the city. The lights twinkling below were a testament to their hard work and perseverance. For a long time no one spoke. They simply watched, letting the moment sink in. "We did it," Sophie said finally, breaking the silence. "Against all odds, we actually did it." Claire smiled, leaning back on her elbows. "Yeah, we did, and we'll keep doing it." "This is just the beginning," Liam nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Whatever happens next, we'll face it together. That's what makes us strong." The three of them sat there until the stars emerged, bright and unyielding against the darkening sky. Though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, they faced them with courage and hope. Eos had been reclaimed, not just from the humans, but from fear and division. And though the road to recovery was long, the people of Eos walked it side by side, united in purpose and spirit. For the first time in centuries, the future looked bright.